Table placement at conventions is one of the things that worries a lot of people and is the thing that is most out of your control. When you get that email with all of your information, the first thing that you do is you go to the map and you try to figure out where you're located. From there, you analyze, are there any poles blocking me? Where will the traffic come from? How close am I to the door? Am I near the bathrooms? Am I near the concessions? Am I near the dealers if you're in the artist alley? Am I near where the autographs are happening? Where am I located in the hall? And so on and so forth. It is one of the things that most people feel break or make sales. There are inarguably good table placement spots and bad table placement spots at a lot of different conventions. But a good table spot or a bad table spot does not mean that your con will be a huge success or a big flop. Table placement is generally not the huge worry that a lot of people make it out to be. But in this video, we're going to go over a few different table placement scenarios that I have experienced and ways that I have tried to make those benefit me or ways that I have just accepted defeat and done what I could. One thing that's pretty common with a lot of conventions that will have an artist alley and a dealer's area, artist alley in this case being a paid spot and not the free spots that furry conventions do, is that the dealer's room have some of the bigger spaces. There's a whole bunch of differences between artist alley and dealers, and I plan to go over that in a future video. Generally, dealers cost more, so they tend to have more of the focus, especially since a lot of official brands will be in the dealer's room. Conventions have the artist alley and the dealer's room in the same area. Some will split them up. It really just depends on the convention. A convention local to me, and Amazement, actually has the artist alley open more hours in the dealer's area, so that way people can filter out of the dealer's area into the artist alley. That convention also has where the artist alley and the dealer's room are separated by a wall. The back of the wall is open to people going around and going to the dealers. It's a pretty nice even solution of keeping them separate, but still encouraging traffic flow between the two. This also means that spots at the back are just as likely to get traffic as spots at the front because people coming from the dealer's room at the back will still be seeing your booth. It's a pretty nice even solution of keeping them separate, but still encouraging traffic flow between the two. There's also the worry of who you're near. There's always the stereotype in artist alley groups where you have so many walls of prints next to each other that people start to see them as blurring together and so will look over your print wall. I had that same concern as a plush maker happen to me at AWA one year, where I was right next to another plush artist that made similar types of anime Pokemon plushies that I did. I really worried that it would impact sales, and I ended up giving myself a little bit of a panic attack over it, but luckily my worries were unfounded and my booth was able to stand out on its own and do just fine. One thing that's helpful in these situations is to make sure that your booth has some sort of identity. You want to have like a nice tablecloth or some sort of display that makes you stand out and unique. Unfortunately, selling plushies, I'm pretty stuck with the cube situation for now until I can invest in something better. But I always make sure to have a nice bright tablecloth, some big attention getter plush, that way people will stop and look at it. I try to have a variety of products so that way there's always something that catches someone's eye. My favorite is that one year at AWA I had Mitty from Made in Abyss as my big attention getting plush, and she got a lot of love. I also had a Talking Nina plushie once at one of the conventions, and those two got a lot of "you're a monster" replies from people, and it was just a lot of fun. A lot of interaction was encouraged with those two. I know one of the ways that I first realized how big of a concern table placement was for other people as well was when I was at a convention and someone asked me how my sales were going, and I said that they were going good, and then they just exclaimed, "That's because you have a good spot," and then like stomped away. I don't know who this person was. It was another fellow artist, but it made me think that table placement is a big concern from people, and it's so easy to blame table placement for you doing good or you doing poorly, when really it's a mix of table placement, your product, your display, what's popular, so many different factors. One of the reasons I don't do MomoCon anymore is because the artist alley there has so many dead zones. It's so easy to get stuck in one. They've since changed where the artist alley and dealer's room is located, so it may be different now. I was waiting to do a little bit more research before going back, but pandemic situation kind of put a damper on those things. The year that I went, the Artist Alley was behind Autograph Line, behind the car show, behind the dealer's room, behind the indie showcase, and behind the game room. It was at the very back, and the artists that were towards the furthest back corners got like no traffic. I was lucky enough to be just an aisle over from where the dealers were, so I got a decent amount of traffic, but for the money that I invested in this show, I did not see a big enough return to encourage me to return. I've talked to several artists about MomoCon to see if what I experienced was a true MomoCon experience or maybe my display was lacking, but I was able to confirm that a lot of artists have experienced that there are just dead spots, and the Artist Alley is not as shopped as other areas of the convention. One of the worst experiences that I've had with table placement was at Asheville Anime Regional Convention in Asheville. I'll say some positives about the convention first. The area that it's in is beautiful. The parking garage is right next to the convention center, and it's an easy just walk from the parking garage to the convention itself. The staff is super helpful, super friendly, really great. Check-in and out was super easy. The convention center is near a lot of local food places, and it has a lot of great places for cosplayers to take photos. There's also a concession stand in the convention with pretty decent prices for concession food. Another benefit was that how the Artist Alley tables were placed against the wall, there was an electrical outlet for pretty much every single table, and it was really nice. I was able to do a lot of sewing for different commissions while I was at the table. But as working on commissions at an anime convention may clue you in, it was very dead. Now, I went in 2016 when the convention was still a one-day show. It's currently a two-day show, but they are talking about going back to one day. And I feel going back to one day would largely benefit them. But when I went, it was just a one-day show. I literally drove up, sold, and went back. So my costs were pretty low. The table itself was also extremely inexpensive. So with the table, 2 badges, and my gas there and back, it was not very much at all. I was able to make my money back pretty quickly. But that said, there weren't many profits either. The way that the Artist Alley was set up is that it was apart from the rest of the convention. The rest of the convention was down a ramp and downstairs, and that's where the dealers were, the concessions were, the panels were, the main stage was. That's where all that stuff was located. Meanwhile, not only are us artists on the top floor, but we're also in a horseshoe shape around the wall. As you can see on the graphic on the screen, there was a large blocky area, which is where different panel rooms were. This convention didn't take advantage of those, but they were available to other conventions that needed them that were hosted on this site. And the artists were just around that in like a horseshoe shape. There was also no real outlet from the other side of the horseshoe, so a lot of people didn't even venture down that far. They got about halfway through the horseshoe shape before just turning around and leaving because they didn't think that there was anything around the corner, and nothing encouraged traffic to go around the corner and let them know that there were more tables down there. Up top, there was also no clear signage to where the Artist Alley was. A lot of the staff were trying to direct traffic that way, but there was no way to bring natural traffic to the Artist Alley. The only people going to the Artist Alley were looking for it. And while that can be fine for a normal convention that is using the entire convention center, if everything is located in one area, there's really no reason for people to leave and go up unless they want to go to a restaurant, and at that point, they're probably on their way and not ready to stop and go shopping. I know one artist that paid for 2 tables was put at the very middle center of the back of the horseshoe, which is just the most out of eyesight that you could possibly be, and he ended up packing up and leaving early. I was lucky because I was one of the first 3 tables, so there was some eyesight on my booth, but the majority of artists were not that lucky. The last time this convention was held was in 2019 due to the pandemic situation, and one of the people that I know went to sell at this convention, and from the pictures they took of their booth, it's still the horseshoe shape and it's still not very good for traffic. I'd say once this convention goes back to being a one-day show, if you want to try it out, go for a dealer spot. I've always wanted to try it out again and go for a dealer spot because I would love to just go on a nice little trip to Asheville, but as an artist, it is absolutely not worth it. If you live local, it might be more worth it to you, but even then, I would just spring for a dealer spot. And what I experienced experienced here, it's sadly the case for a lot of other conventions as well. I've heard from several of my convention friends where the artist alley is just put in like a hallway that's away from the rest of the convention. One of the reasons that I ended up giving up my spot at SuperCon was because they moved the artist alley from the big room with all the dealers and autographs and everything to a separate room in the neighboring hotel. With everyone spending their time in the area with all the celebrities and dealers, there was not much to encourage them to walk over there. And so I just decided that the risk wasn't worth it. The convention then later, I found out, went around right afterwards, and due to the negative backlash, switched it back. And at that point, because I'd given up my table, I was just out. But that's a story for another time. That's another situation where the artist alley is behind everything, even when it's in the same room. But due to the amount of traffic that this convention gets, you're going to get a bunch of sales, so it's worth it. Not nearly as much as if you had a coveted dealer spot, but still, with the cheaper price of the booth, it is definitely worth it. You do notice a distinct traffic difference between the dealer's area and the artist area. The dealer's area, this is of course post-pandemic knowledge, is packed full of people. And then the artist alley, not so much traffic trickling through, especially since between the dealers and the artists is a big comic area. And the year that I went, the comic area, which was for different comic artists to sell their comics, was fairly empty. So it made it seem like that there wasn't too much beyond that. Now at NC Comic Con, it was quite the opposite, where the artist alley was getting all the traffic and the dealer's room was getting hardly any, because the artist alley was put in the forefront due to the comic artists being mixed with the artist alley people. And because a lot of those comic artist guests are why people are there, they put the artist alley first, so a lot of people did their shopping there and didn't trickle through to the dealer's area, which was in the next room over and at the very end of the hallway. The most recent convention that I did actually put me in a terrible spot. For some reason, they had not marked me as paid, so they put me in one of the areas where people that just showed up the day of the convention were selling. Later on, we actually realized that there was a table in the middle that was set up for me, but because we found out about it so late, we weren't able to move over. So my table was behind a big booth. It was in the very corner. It was very far away from everyone. If you watch the video, you can see I am just in the middle of the back of the room, in the middle of nowhere. I was luckily able to swing my table around so it was seen from the main aisle. If I had stayed against the wall where I originally was, no one would have been able to see me. And despite all this, I still did pretty good on sales. I think a lot of it had to do with that lime green tablecloth being able to be spotted from just like across the room. It was so bright, and that's why I use it. And then there's the dreaded booth location where you're right next to one of those carnival-style barkers. They're grabbing people away from your booth, they're shouting into the aisleway, and so people tend to avoid that, just like they avoid one of those kiosks in the mall where they want to do your nails or sell you some sort of skin treatment. That situation sucks. There's no two ways about it, and the main way to solve this situation is to have a conversation with the person running the booth, and then if the issue keeps persisting, to contact con staff so that way they can handle it. That's an unfortunate situation, and it's one that I have not been in personally. Plenty of my friends have been in, and I know just how awful it is. So you're at a convention and you think you have a bad spot. What do you do now? The first thing that I do is I look at the con map and I try to figure out some benefits. Am I near a popular booth where people will be encouraged to go down that way, such as a place that sells video games or popular action figures or lately Pokemon cards? Am I near the bathroom? Am I near a concession stand? Am I near some sort of exit for the building, some sort of entrance? What am I near? And how can I figure out traffic directions? That will then determine how I set up my booth. If I'm lucky enough to be on the end, I will make sure that I use the one side of my cubes to hang sharks or jellyfish or some sort of plushie off of it, so that way it can kind of catch people's eyes as they're going around the corner. I also try to have a nice tablecloth. I have two different booth setups. One is a little more themed. I went a little crazy with the theming. And one is just my normal lime green and pink, which is what I'm using for the pandemic situation because it's so easy to set up without too many extra parts. Both of them have a flashy tablecloth. Your tablecloth is something that I recommend you put a little bit of time into. There's sites like Vistaprint where you can get custom printed tablecloths. So if you want to have like a nice pattern all the way around it or your characters on all sides, that's perfect. The custom tablecloth is something that I plan to do in the future. Right now I have my bright lime green and bright pink that catches people's eye, and then when I have my blue setup, my tablecloth is actually a type of sequin material, which usually glistens in the light and catches people's eyes that way. From there, you want your booth to have that wow factor. You have really awesome product, you have a nice aesthetic to your booth that makes it stand out and unique. Are your prints just amazing? Try to figure out some way to make your booth stand out from the crowd. If there's a bunch of print walls, how can you make your booth stand out? If there's several different plushie artists and crafters, how do you make your booth stand out? And of course, your products. You want to make sure that you're constantly having new inventory. Every convention you want to try to debut some sort of new plushie or print or something that will really catch people's eyes. As people walk by your booth, especially if they glance over, say hello. A nice hello will encourage someone to turn around and look at your booth more than they would have just walking by it, and then they might see something that they want to take home. You don't have to go into a full sales pitch. You don't have to do much beyond that. Just a simple hello is great. Plus, if someone is actually stopping at your booth, a nice greeting lets them know that you are aware of them there and makes them feel welcomed. And if there's anyone that was wanting to do something uncouth like deal or something like that, they're aware that you are paying attention, and so they're encouraged to go elsewhere. Post on your social medias that you're going to be at this convention. That way people will know that you're there and be on the lookout for you, even if you're not in an obvious location. One fun way to do that is to have an image of the map and then have your booth circled and then do some nice little graphics or something saying, I'm gonna be here, table M29 or whatever it is. And if the placement is just that terrible, there's nothing you can do to encourage traffic. Take the product that you have at the convention, start listing it online, start promoting it to your followers. Maybe you'll be able to sell some of the product that's not moving there online and try to make up some sales that way. I always take a moment to vent or be sad. And then after that, and I get that out of my system, time to find solutions. You're here to sell, and unfortunately, wallowing in a bad situation isn't going to be conducive to getting some money flowing. So just make the best of your bad situation and do what you can. Try rearranging your booth a little bit too. Maybe it'll help encourage people to look at it, especially if you display your stuff in a certain way. Who knows? In the end, don't let table placement bother you too much. It's something that you can't control, so all you can do is just control how you handle that table placement with your display, with your advertising, and with your products. Try to look for positives and opportunities, and if all else fails, turn to your online audience and try to get them to pick up some of the slack that the convention is bringing to you. I hope this video helped you guys, and some of my anecdotes from my experiences provided some good information for you. And of course, if there's any video topics you'd like to see me cover, let me know. I'm trying to do one edited video a week. I'm trying to do them on Mondays. This one was a little bit late because my water heater burst, but so until next time guys, I'm Hibiscus Stitch and take care.